and welcome everybody to this week's episode of Dr. Tech Show, where myself, Pauline Roche, and Sweyn Hunter will attempt to guide you to the world of online communications. This program was started by our late and dearly departed friend John Popham, and we're delighted to be continuing with his legacy. And we are joined today with a very special guest from the Midlands, Rachel Conlisk, and we'll hear more from Rachel in a minute. So we're delighted to be here again in November. So we'll start off as usual with how's the weather where you are. In Birmingham, I'll tell you that there is some sun. I can see out the window, and I'm hopeful for a walk later on today. Sweyn, how's the weather where you are? Oh, you're muted, love.
Yes. Hello, I'm in Orkney and the weather is fine compared to over the weekend anyway, when we had storms and cancelled ferries and all sorts of things. It's calmish, it's quite bright, although there's not much sunshine, so it's good.
And Rachel, how are you, and how's the weather where you are? And
I'm not far from you, Pauline, and it's very windy and a little bit of sun.
Very good. Well, I hope you've been out doing what you do today, and you get to do it other days as well during this week. So this week we're celebrating Trustees Week 2020, which is from the 2nd to the 6th of November. And there are numerous events on, obviously nothing face to face really, but there are events taking place up and down the country. And Trustees Week is an annual event to showcase the great work that trustees do and to highlight opportunities for people from all walks of life to get involved and make a difference. Many organisations are celebrating and supporting the ongoing work of trustees who govern work of organisations using the hashtag Trustee Week or Trustees Week. And for those of us who are interested in the numbers, according to the Trustee Week website, there are approximately 196,000 charities in the UK, with 167,000 of them in England and Wales, 24,000 in Scotland and 5,000 registered in Northern Ireland. And there are just over 1 million trustees, and that is made up of 850,000 in England and Wales, 180,000 in Scotland, and 30,000 in Northern Ireland. So they're good numbers. I've been a trustee for many organisations since the 90s, and I find it rewarding, I suppose you'd have to say that, but challenging as well at times, when you kind of have to make decisions that aren't popular, but on the whole it's a good thing to do, I think, for people who have a bit of spare time and have some skills. I did a talk a few months ago for Reach Volunteering, who do a digital trustees program, and I said it's great to be a digital trustee and to be, bring your digital skills to an organisation, but you really still have to have a passion for the subject of the charity. If you get involved just because you've got digital skills, then it's not the same. And your frustration levels that arise as being a trustee and having digital skills will increase if you don't have a passion for the subject. You have to have patience to be a trustee. And be prepared to be in it for the long haul. That's my experience. Sweyn and Rachel, have you got experience of being a trustee? Can't hear you, Rachel.
No, I don't. I have no experience of being a trustee. It's something I'd be really interested in.
Me neither. I've been on management committees of various bodies over the years, but never an actual charity trustee. Yeah,
I think if you've been on a government, a management committee of some sort, then you have some experience of it. But obviously, a trustee is a recognised entity, and you have responsibilities under charity law and so on. So it's important to be aware of that. Okay, so welcome, Rachel. We're very delighted to have you as our guest, special guest this week.
Thanks for having me.
And just give you a bit of an introduction from the various places that you are on the interweb. I have picked up that you're a bubbleologist, a circus skills instructor, a hula hooper, but also a data analyst and web designer. And formerly you are the founder and director of Spinsonic Arts and Creative Arts, Active Lives CIC, and a board member of Active Black Country. You call yourself a hula hooping data nerd and expert at breaking down physical, creative, and digital skills into step-by-step, easy-to-follow instructions upskilling adults and children, increasing happiness levels all round. That sounds like a perfect person to be on our show today. So please introduce yourself and tell us a bit about what you do.
I can't follow that really. You've introduced me absolutely perfectly. I can never say it like that. I just mumble something about I love hula hooping, I like blow bubbles, and that's about it.
When we talked earlier, though, when we were talking about coming on the show, you have some kind of previous experience around the digital world. And I know you're applying some of that now. So tell us about your early experiences in this area.
Yeah, well, it's funny. I'm so caught up with my world of circus previously. I kind of left all of the data and the digital stuff behind. That's kind of always been something I've always done, but I just get really carried away with kind of fun times and glitter. But since the lockdown and everything's been moving digital, I'm just spending more and more time at my laptop instead of away from it. So I'm focusing more on the digital skills I already have and how I can use them to help other people and use them to make an impact now that I can't with my circus and wellbeing arts. So before my wonderful circus career and business, I was a data analyst, and I started doing that for a pharmaceutical company, very self-taught with Excel, access and VBA and VBE. So I started teaching myself that. I was such a nerd. I'd spend every lunch break at this company in front of the computer, going through tutorial after tutorial, teaching myself all of this and then making all of these things and going, ta-da, we can use this now and automate things. It's brilliant. And I love doing that. And then when the internet started to be like a thing and companies actually started to use it, although not very much, I built our company intranet. I taught myself Java and HTML because I love learning new stuff. Languages are great. And I built the intranet site, and we had this huge paper folder of forms. So I worked out, because forms weren't a thing then, they were you had to hand code, like literally hand code everything. So I figured out how to do that, and I've made all of our paper forms online forms, and I dragged everyone in the company kicking and screaming into a paperless office. That was really fun. And then after I had my son, I went to work in a school because it fit around being a single parent really well as a data analyst. So now I still work there 1 or 2 days a week, depending on what I've got on. And all of my data now is attached to a little face, which is lovely. I love that. Instead of being meaningless sales data, I can analyse pupils' performance and progress and find out who needs extra help and what will make an impact for certain pupil groups. So it's the human face of data, which I really love. And I also build websites. So I build all my own websites, and I build them for other people if they want them. And I also am building them for schools now because they like the work that I've done already and they want more of it, which is great.
Wow, that's a really a great career timeline. How long would you say you've been working in the field?
Gosh, so my boy is 12, so probably 20 years.
So you've seen some changes in those times. As you say, people weren't using data and analytics, I suppose, stuff like that back in the day.
Not like it was now. Everything was different. The internet. I remember when the internet didn't even exist and it was brand new, and everyone used to say, "I'm surfing the web," like it was this really cool thing, and it had like flashing GIFs everywhere, and every website was so brightly coloured it made your eyes bleed. Things have changed an awful lot in that time. And now I've got to admit, I'm being outpaced by my own son. He can outcode me. He knows more code than I do. He knows more programming languages than I do. Terrible. He rolls his eyes at my terrible technical skills.
I think from what I know of you, he's inherited some of your entrepreneurial activity as well, and he's sharing what he knows with other people.
Yeah, he does. He does like to share what he knows. He's really into coding and electronics and robotics and putting them all together, and that keeps him quiet, so I can't complain.
And how's it been since lockdown? How's it been for you and for people that and you're around you?
Oh man, it's been really hard. I feel very lucky compared to a lot of people, so I'm not going to moan too much. Um, but it's just the weirdest thing is like everything will seem normal sometimes, and then something will happen, or you'll see something and you realise, oh, everything's not normal. And this is all very weird. It's like we're in another dimension, and it's been hard, like with my businesses folding, because we worked with very vulnerable children and adults and care homes and dementia groups. So like my circus company is just on infinite hold, and my wellbeing company, we're trying to, as I said, move that online, and hopefully we can just keep working and keep helping people in different ways. That's all I can hope. And what I'm really conscious of trying to do as well is not just do it for myself, but all the instructors that we used to work with, I was so conscious of just having to cancel all their work. So I'm trying to think of ways that I can still hire my instructors and pay them and help them work with the groups that they used to, or new groups of people. But I'm not going to lie, it's really hard. And some days I just feel completely useless, like it's all going terribly wrong. Other days I feel like okay about everything, but it's really up and down.
I know as well as you know, the work that you do anyway, you've also been trying to help other people, even with a small amount of funding. Being aware of like a small amount of funding can help people get started. You started a tiny grant to give to somebody, and how's that going?
Oh, that was really, really great. Yeah, we've awarded it now. So it was in the summer. I had the idea because there's just so much news about job losses. And I remember I started my business with a £500 grant from Unlimited. And it, like, as a single parent, it meant the world to me. Like, it was a complete game changer and transformed my whole life. So I thought, I'm going to pay it forwards and do the same thing. So I set up the Black Country Ideas Den with a £500 grant and 6 months support to help get your business going. And it was brilliant. I had some really lovely people apply. And in the end, it was such a hard decision. I actually chose 2 winners. So for the first winner, Cavort is a brand new dance and fitness brand, and they're based out of Tipton, and they do a lot of really great work with vulnerable people. And they won the £500 grant. But then there's another business based in Smethwick, and I really loved what she did as well. So I've named her runner-up, and I'm building her a website and setting her up online with the domain, and also hosting and business support for 6 months as well. Because I remember in her interview that she didn't have a website, and she was saying, I don't know what I'm going to do or how I'm going to do it. So I thought, well, I'm going to solve that problem for you. And I love doing that kind of thing, so I'll do that.
Great. That's brilliant. It's such a great story and a microcosm of what's needed. But like I said earlier about having a passion, you know, you have a passion for this, and you clearly, you know, are able to help other people. So it's well done you. You know, you deserve all the credit for that.
It feels like a very selfish endeavour, because it makes me really happy to do it. The feel-good factor you get from doing something like that, I think, is the best feeling in the world.
I think we can relate to that, can't we, Sweyn? We do a lot of things for that. We just, and this show, like, is an example of that. Something that we do because we love it and because we love John.
Absolutely,
it was. It's good to be able to carry it on. But the before. Like Rachel and I, you and I have known each other for a while, but I know that the most recent kind of contact we had, and which I thought would be good for you to come on the show, was to talk about how schools are managing around devices during lockdown, what's been happening. So do you want to tell me a bit about your knowledge of that, and we can have a chat about that?
Yeah, well, it was a couple of things actually that occurred in the same week. I'd collated almost 300 surveys from families in Smethwick on their access to home learning, their internet at home, and how home learning went for them, and what barriers and problems they faced. And in the same week as I collated all that data, the government announced that they were slashing schools' allocations of laptops for disadvantaged children by like 80%. So where a school, for example, might have 30 pupil premium children, they might only have like 3 or 4 devices to give them if they were sent home, isolating. And I know, like my little boy's school, like in secondary school, every year group from year 7 up to year sixth form. I'm in old money. I don't know what it is in the new money. Every year group except one has been sent home for 2 weeks in just in the last half term alone. So it has a massive impact on kids. You know, there's these kids where they've got such a big attainment and progress gap already to non-disadvantaged, non-pupil premium kids. Having these weeks of school with no access to devices is going to really affect their future. And it's not just that. I've noticed when Sam was having to isolate for 2 weeks, that's my son, it wasn't the work that was the problem with him, but it was the fact that he was so isolated from the class. And a couple of times they had like a live Google link to the classroom, so just so he could hear their voices, and he was like a different boy. He was so happy. And being able to use the computer to do his like online gaming with his friends at school, that was massive for him. And without that, you know, I'd have a really different little boy. You know, he'd be so sad. It's that his mental health has really suffered already in lockdown. And like I said, I feel really lucky with how we've been able to manage and having the digital access and the knowledge that we have. So I was thinking, I had all of these things in my head at the same time. I thought it'd be really wonderful to kind of plug that gap somehow. And it's not something I can do like myself, but I was thinking, I wonder if there are any businesses out there who like have who are local to schools, who might want to help if they have old devices that, sorry, phone's going, if they had old devices that they might need to recycle or get rid of, is there any way that they could be cleaned and wiped and loaned to schools who are in their local area to make a shortfall for disadvantaged children? It'd be good for businesses. I'm sure they could write off tax against it, be good for their corporate social responsibility, but it's a huge ask. But I thought, I wonder if that could happen. How could it happen? And then there's the other problem to get over is access to the internet, because I noticed in the data that I was collating, there were 2 problems that came up. The first one was that children didn't have devices. Parents might just have their phone, and like several kids, or they might have one device, like one laptop between kids, and there were some who didn't have anything at all. And then even amongst those that did have access to devices, they didn't have unlimited data. They might only have a little bit of data, or they might have hardly any. Oh, we've got a little visitor.
Hello. I think that's our first cat on the show.
So I'd love to find a way of doing something about this to help plug this gap, to help find devices and think of a way to help them access the internet. There's got to be something we can do as a community.
Well, you're not on your own, Rachel. And interestingly, we had a couple of weeks ago, we had 2 speakers on the show from Nominate Trust and Third Sector Lab, Chris Ashworth and Ross McCulloch, talking about a project that is, you know, is very similar, I think, to what you're talking about, called the Reboot Project. And they have launched a national website called rebootproject.uk, where they have created a playbook for organizations and, you know, groups who want to get involved in doing this very thing and repurposing unused devices from, you know, wherever they come from. And the joy of having a playbook, it means that someone isn't starting from scratch and developing a project like this, because it will take a lot of organization as a national project anyway, although I know there are local projects happening as well. But it's good to know that there is a national awareness of this. And after Chris was on our program, he has appeared on other programs as well, talking about this Reboot Project. And I think at the moment if you go, they have a Facebook page as well as this website. But if you go on the Facebook page, well, if you go just on the website here, it shows that the areas that they're concentrating on the moment are Yorkshire, Humber, the southeast, I think, and London, Greater London. So I think that we need to develop some traction where we are in the Midlands, because, you know, I'd like to see this happening again. So it's a follow-on from the Devices.now project. I don't know if you heard of that one, Rachel.
No.
Where a number of organizations, you know, recognized that the need, and were kind of lobbying government and others to make devices available from industry. Well, the Reboot project goes further and recognises that, you know, in homes up and down the country and offices and, city councils and so on, there are unused devices that could be repurposed for this very thing, for schools and for community groups who, you know, need access. I mean, it doesn't get over the data poverty angle, which we've also talked about on this program, but I think, you have to start somewhere, and having a device obviously would help people to start addressing the other needs. And I think, if this was I work with funders as well, and if we can start getting funders to also recognize this kind of need and build a multi-pronged approach to this, I think we can make a difference. I mean, they're saying, the data is still, is it one, I can't remember the numbers, but there's still like huge numbers of people without devices and without access to connectivity or data. So it's not gonna change overnight. But I think people like yourself getting involved to get involved in projects like this will make a difference. Sweyn, what's your take on the whole repurposing devices angle?
I think the Reboot project is absolutely fantastic. And I agree totally with everything that Rachel says. I'm also trying to work out how to end the share that I've shared, just on a technical note. But anyway, yeah, I think. Thank you.
I've done it now. Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay.
I think yes. I mean, I'm picking up, I think, from your comments that you're talking about primary school mainly.
Primary and secondary school.
And secondary, yeah.
Yeah, these were primary parents that I surveyed, that I got the data from, but it doesn't end there.
No, I mean, and I think if anything, the situation in secondary schools is even more complicated because of all the, the many teachers to pupils relationships that there are. You tend to have lots of different teachers, but yeah, I mean, anything we can do to get devices to families who need them, as long as they're of a minimum stacks of Chromebook sort of standard. I think that's really important. But the other issue, as we all say, as we all agree, is trying to make data affordable for people. And we had guests on a few weeks ago who are trying to get the idea of a more generalized data gifting process underway, so that for example, companies like EE, you can gift data to members of your own family who are on the same account. But these, I can't remember who they were now, but they were saying that they would like to encourage at least the phone companies to allow us to gift data to some sort of central data account, which could then be allocated to people who needed it for schoolwork and other things. So the combination of those two things are that's 2 out of the 3 things that people need. The other thing, of course, being skills. To some extent, if pupils are learning at school, they will get some instruction from the school about how to do that. But there's a lot of work to be done there by projects like Devices.now in England and Connecting Scotland in Scotland to actually provide expertise just to help people get to what they need once they are connected. And I think that's sometimes another thing that's missed out of some of these projects, and it's good to see that it is actually in the current crop of digital connection type projects this time around.
Yeah, how do you mean, Rachel, we talked about it earlier, you call yourself self-taught in a lot of your digital work, and as I am as well, a lot of the time. So how do you come by learning the skills? What do you think are the things that makes a person be interested in increasing their digital skills?
Gosh, you mean for other people or for me personally?
Well, either.
No, I'm just a nerd, and it's like I'm really stubborn, and I won't have it if I can't do something or I don't know how to do it. As I always decide what I want, and then figure out how to do it. And that's how I've ended up teaching myself everything. I've known exactly what I want to happen, but I've had to work out how to make it happen. And I won't take no for an answer. I just plow through until I've got it. And I Google a lot now. But I think for other people, who aren't quite as bloody minded as I am. It's making it seem impossible. People will often, in my experience, go, oh, that's too hard for me, I don't know how to do things like that, or that's not the kind of thing that I can do, or that's, you know, that's for other people. It's kind of making it relevant, making them know what problems this knowledge will solve for them, and making it accessible in plain English. Whether they're working out how they learned, like, do they learn by pictures, do they learn hands-on, will they learn by being taught to, asking questions, and just tailoring, breaking down the knowledge to that person's learning style. I think the main point is making it so that they understand what problem it's going to solve for them, because that'll give them the drive to actually plow through it when it gets difficult.
I know that the Lloyds Bank produced a report. They've been doing it for the last 4 or 5 years on digital skills in charities and small businesses. And, you know, they're still in the Midlands, certainly there's still, you know, a high number of people, percentage of people without basic digital skills. But, you know, on the flip side, there are a large number of people with digital skills. And I think sometimes people have more skills than they realize. And it's good for them to be able to know that. I mean, there's an essential digital skills standard where they can kind of look through it and see, yes, I can switch a computer on, I can use a mouse, I can cut and paste, you know, the kind of things that we take for granted. But actually, when you're trying to, you know, evaluate your skill, it's good just to be able to tick a box and say, yes, I can do that. And I try and do that with some of the groups that I work with. And in fact, we'll be talking about it more at Sandwell Networks Group tomorrow if you're able to make the meeting.
I am, yeah.
Yeah. Because I know Richard Flatley there is also aware of the kind of the need and the, you know, these local programs, and hopefully we'll projects. I mean, hopefully we'll have a chance to talk about some of the stories we picked up along the way today, including from Wigan. Local projects are important to kind of build people's sense of what they can do together locally, because I think national programs are great too, but if people feel, you know, an affinity to their area, then they might feel more inclined to get involved in local digital skills projects.
I remember
yeah.
in my first ever temp job, way back in the mists of time, I'll never ever forget how terrified I was sitting there. I'd never seen a Windows computer before. We had BBC computers when I left school. And I sat there in front of this thing and I didn't know how to switch it on. That was the extent of my digital skills when I started work. And I didn't know what to do. And I was terrified, and I'll never, ever forget that. And like, I always think now, because I do a lot of how-to guides on for people who are maintaining the websites that I build and using the databases that I've built. And I always think that it always makes me think we have to just make things so, you'll think it's oversimplifying it or patronizing, but it's not, breaking things down to the very basic level, because there might just be one person out there like me who has no experience, thinks, don't even know how to turn it on, I can't do this. But as soon as they know what button to press, it starts to make sense.
Absolutely. I find it myself. I mean, we have a variety of devices in the office where I work, and my partner's screen is different to mine. And his is turned on by switching a button down kind of on the ground. And like, I would never think of, you know, you go through a process of finding that out, but, you know, you kind of make assumptions, or I think as you said, you'd be curious and be bloody minded and not willing to give up on things. And I think over the months that we've been running this program and doing other things together on digital, Sweyn and I have discovered, you know, you just keep looking for things. Like we ran an event for infrastructure organizations there in October, and you know, we discovered things about the platform we were using while we were using it. And I think that's great if you have that you know, that kind of curiosity and kind of the willingness to learn as well. And you know, we don't know everything.
Just somehow trying to encourage people to have that confidence to try that in that sort of spirit. And I think that's where the so-called digital champion type role is really important. Just to be somebody that's enthusiastic, say, oh yeah, that's a good idea, how will we find this out for you, and then try and transfer those kind of, you called it Googling, might as well call it that, skills, you know, to try and think how to find out what you need to do. And I think that's one of the most important things in all of these schemes.
Definitely, yeah. Okay, so shall we look at some of the stories that we've found this week and share knowledge and have some chat about those. The first one is from Digital Leaders. Digital Leaders Week was in October, and they were doing all kinds of stories about, leading using digital, and the story that Sweyn picked up last week was about making COVID-19 the catalyst for ending digital poverty, which relates to what we've just been talking about. And obviously they acknowledge that this is a story by Chris Ashworth, actually, that we talked about from Nominate Trust. He recognises the pandemic has increased the inequality between those on either side of the digital divide, and that we have to keep going on it. But he concentrated on an area that he says is woefully misunderstood, that being data poverty, and that it had an impact on so many more than we imagine, including students and our young mums. This was the figure that really struck me. There are 25 million pay-as-you-go mobile contracts in the UK, many susceptible to data poverty, and obviously this number is going to grow, especially with the next lockdown. But when your mobile is the only means of accessing the internet, if you hit a data limit, you're shut out of digital society until you can afford to top up. And some of those people were supported during lockdown with Snook, a company called Snook, and the UK government. They managed to secure zero rate access to certain key sites, including the entire NHS digital estate, to ensure those in data poverty could access critical advice. It was a quick fix, but we need a more sustainable solution. So it's good to see a network like Digital Leaders recognizing that, because a lot of the people in that network of public sector and private sector, and they don't necessarily have the challenges that the rest of us have. But it's good to see them talking about it. I don't know if you're aware of Digital Leaders, Rachel. There is quite a big grouping in the West Midlands. Yeah, they haven't had any obviously physical meetings recently, but it is one of those ones that I would encourage people to know about and kind of see what they're doing. So the next story I picked up was one about a tweet chat on digital inclusion, and you don't often see digital inclusion chats. You see stories about them, which is where we pick up a lot of our stories, but not having a chat about it. And this is tomorrow at 7 o'clock, when this program will be going out again on Hope Radio. But you can pick up the tweet chat after or before or after the program goes out again. And the question from the person who posted the tweet is, what do you find easy about adopting new digital tools, and what makes it difficult? Rachel, what would you say, do you find easy or difficult about new tools?
Well, that's really interesting. I'll definitely be on that tweet chat, because I noticed it's from the NHS Ageing Well, which is another sector I've been looking at. For me personally, I'm okay with adopting digital tools, because I love new things. It's like having a shiny new toy to play with for me. But what I have found is, because we do a lot of work with the elderly in dementia activity groups and care homes, and I've been speaking to some of the community group leaders that I work with about how to reach the elderly who aren't engaging, and they found that it's been really, really hard to get people to, even when they've got a device, to log on to Zoom for their friendship chats or for activities, because they're just not interested. And we're racking our brains in a conversation actually at the start of last week to think, how can we make it something that they want to do, because it's a really great tool for reducing their social isolation. But if they don't want to, you can't make someone. So why is that? I'd love to know. I don't know the answer, but yeah, I'd love to know how to reach these people who might be feeling lonely and might be in need of support, but don't want to do it digitally.
I sometimes wonder, because my mum is, in her 80s, and she uses an iPad and has like for, a long enough time that she's comfortable with Zoom and everything. But we have a family Zoom call every Sunday at 5 o'clock. But she still, she gets an email and then she has to click on the link, and she still doesn't. It's not comfortable. It's not second nature to her yet. And I think in my experience with her and with other people, they're afraid of breaking something. You know, they're afraid of making a mistake, getting it wrong, ending up somewhere they didn't want to go. Yeah, breaking it, I think, is the main fear. Would you say that, Sweyn?
Yes, I mean, it's something that John Popham was very strong on as well. His concept of technology-enabled nattering. Don't call it anything technical. Call it, you know, just having a natter with your friends or your family or whatever, and try and smooth over the few technical steps that there are by just being enthusiastic about chatting. Because in his experience, and he's done a few blog posts about that under the theme of technology-enabled nattering. He found that really was what people wanted to do. They wanted to chat with their friends. Way back years ago, there was a scheme to try and encourage older people to use their. You remember the old friends and family list on BT accounts? There was a project to try and persuade people to put each other on this list, and that project actually morphed then into Skype, being based on Skype. And I'm sure that there are lots of people now trying to encourage people to communicate and to keep in touch with the likes of Skype and Zoom and all of those things. And I think just ways of breaking down the apparent technological babble of it, just to make it a way of being like phoning somebody up, is I think. Yeah, quite
Rachel, in the first few programs that we had here of Dr. Tech Show, we had we talked about tools like Facebook Portal and Comp and Cradle, where they were kind of less buttons to press, if you like, devices to be used in care homes and so on, that might make it a bit easier for people to connect. We never actually had a Facebook portal to assess. John was hoping that somebody would send him a test device, but that didn't happen. It might happen again. But we have, so we have made ourselves aware of, devices that are out there. But I think we still need more to get over this reluctance, and it's going to be, because it's going to be more important. On an ongoing basis. I can't see it becoming less important anytime soon. So we'd like to encourage that and support it. So the next story was about mapping digital inclusion across health and care in England, and this was from M Habitat, who are working with NHSX to find out more about the picture of inclusive digital transformation in the health and care context, and at a local level across the country. And they define inclusive digital transformation as being means purposefully working together to co-design inclusion into digital transformation at a strategic and delivery level to ensure everyone benefits from digitally enabled health and care. And so they're doing this survey. They've done this mapping exercise and are surveying local stakeholders. And so they do have a survey up, actually. The deadline is the 11th of November. For people to map their locality. So I think we'll put that out on, have you got that there? Yeah, you have that there, Sweyn. We'll put it out again on Twitter and encourage people to respond to that, because I don't know about you, but I use a certain amount of online contact with my GP, but not loads. So is that for local authorities, Sweyn? NHS leaders, yeah.
I'm not sure. I'll go back to the main page.
Yeah.
Local stakeholders, it's for, whatever that means.
Yeah. It's interesting to see that they're trying to gather information about it. They quote the Lloyds Bank Consumer Digital Index saying there are 9 million people who struggle to use digital in the UK, and the people most likely to be digitally excluded are also more likely to need health and care services. So it's good to see that being acknowledged.
It's also, I mean, it's the old thing, the rate of digital inclusion, even though more and more people are connected to the internet, it doesn't mean to say that they're actually able to use the services that they need to use, because although they may have a device, they may, as we've already said, not have the data to interact with it when they need to, or they just might not be able to not physically, but technologically get themselves to the right place and click the right buttons. So digital exclusion is a lot more complicated than just counting the people who can't get online.
Definitely, yeah. Okay, well, we get more, we encourage more responses to that survey and get more information, and maybe come back to it another time. So as we do other times on this program, we're visiting other countries to see what they're doing, and we're looking at the cost of data. As we've discussed earlier, it is an issue. And this was a story we picked up from the Daily Nigerian, where the Nigerian government is moving to reduce data cost from 1,000 Nigerian, I don't know what the Nigerian currency is actually, I meant to check that out, sorry, 1,000 to 930 per gigabyte. And this was the executive vice chairman of the Nigeria Communication Commission revealed that the Ministry of Communication and Digital Economy is planning to reduce the cost of data in Nigeria from what would translate in sterling to £2 to 79 pence per gigabyte, and that's obviously a great, decrease. And I looked up the average cost of 1 gig of data in the UK, and that's it's £5 and 3 pence. With the global average, with data cost being assessed from 230 companies, is £6 and 45 pence per 1 gig in 2019 terms. I think we'll be seeing more and more of how that's being assessed, but so the UK is not the worst, but it's certainly not the cheapest either. So it's good, but it's good to see Nigeria, starting to address this. And apparently the part of the plan is the new national broadband plan in Nigeria for the year 2020-25, which says Nigeria must provide broadband connectivity, cover virtually all parts of the country, and deploy 4G infrastructure. So the ministry was tasked to come up with a digital economy policy and strategies to bring the cost down. And it has come down, but to what it is now, but they want to bring it down even further. And they're saying that the country must provide pervasive broadband data infrastructure, and that this plan was a policy of the government of President Muhammadu Buhari. So in terms of ranking with other countries, the Commission has found out Nigeria stands in 4th position among the countries with lowest data tariff on the African continent. And he points out that South Africa, despite our economic development, sells data higher than Nigeria, and the country is not even among the lowest with data costs. So it's just good to see other continents, aiming for the thing that we know is really important to address. And so we go on to another story about the cost of 1 gig of mobile data, and again we're conscious of this because I work with small organizations, and they're trying to help people in their local communities by buying dongles or giving them data packages of some sort. So this was a March 2019 story, and I think it'll probably be updated again soon, but it's in thisismoney.co.uk. And as I said in the previous story, the 1 gig of mobile data in Britain is just over £5, according to Cable. It does say Zimbabwe is the most expensive place for data at 56.63 per gig. Wow, that's a huge cost. With India in the cheapest place at 20 pence per gig. Well, that sounds good, because I know that from my experience when I was working in Ireland in September and doing Zoom calls, it was costing me for an hour on Zoom, it was costing me 1 gig. So it's great to know it would be cheaper in India than other places. According to this story, Britain is ranked a disappointing 136th place in a comprehensive league table, detailing how much 1 gig of mobile data costs. The United States came in as one of the most expensive developed nations for purchasing mobile data. Their average 1 gig cost is £9 and 35 pence. And the cheapest place being India, costs the same amount in Kyrgyzstan. And Kazakhstan and Ukraine take up the 3rd and 4th cheapest countries, and they're all former USSR nations. But Russia was only the 12th cheapest with 69 pence per gig, and it gives a whole lot of other countries and their charges. So it's interesting to see how countries compare with each other, and I'm sure that'll influence where people go to live, because people are talking about moving countries and living elsewhere, and data is definitely going to be a consideration. Have you costed what your data costs you, Rachel, where you live?
No, I've never even thought of it before. I never have. I just blindly accept what I'm given and get the best deal I can. But it's really shocking to see it laid out like that in a table. It really brings it into perspective. Makes you think, how can one country do it so cheaply and another one will charge so much for it? What are the factors influencing that?
It'll be interesting to know, and I'm sure we will see more stories about that, and we'll cover them when we get them. So we move on to another story about downloading, or how long it takes to download a film, for example. This is a story called COVID has made our digital infrastructure a priority from neweurope.eu, and it tells us that a 5 gig film that takes 2 minutes and 58 seconds to download in Liechtenstein takes the best part of a day in South Sudan, assuming your home is even connected. And again, it talks about the broadband speed globally. Apparently, Germany is just 42nd in broadband speed globally, with the UK 47th and Italy 68th. So again, we have work to do to increase the speed of broadband. I'm still getting my head around how that works. Sweyn, do you know more about this broadband speeds and what we should be looking for?
Oh, it's a complicated topic, and I suspect that there'll be some kind of trade-off between speed and cost as well. The faster a link is, the more a gig of data will probably cost. Yeah, it's something that all internet service providers struggle with, is to try and provide enough both data to your own home and then enough data backhaul links in all the parts of the network to try and keep the speeds up. Just going back to the cost of a gigabyte of data in the previous story, I suspect that focusing on 1 gigabyte of data has possibly inflated the costs in many countries, because if you buy a SIM deal with only 1 gigabyte of data on it, it'll be a lot more expensive than per gigabyte than if you buy 10 or 20 or even more. So I think there's maybe a little bit of caution needed with those comparisons across the countries for the cost. In terms of speed, I mean, everyone knows how broadband has developed over the years in the UK and in other countries. It's just a question of more and more research and development to get faster and faster speeds out of the copper cables that are in use. And then eventually, one day, perhaps maybe in anywhere other than barn, we'll end up with fiber to the house. And at that point, a lot of things will then just be fine, because the capacity of copper to the premises fiber to the premises is massively bigger than copper.
Yeah.
And as Chris Condor of Barn and others like that say, maybe the thing would be to put all the investment we can into speedily just retiring the copper infrastructure so that we can just get on with things. But that's a huge thing globally, particularly for countries that are struggling financially and so on. It's not something that will happen quickly.
It is something we talk about, Rachel, from a fair bit on the program about, increasing the speed for people. And Chris Condor, that Sweyn has just referred to, is a woman who's been spearheading a scheme in the north. Is it the northwest? Sweyn, forgive me. Yeah, that sort of area. Network anyway, that have basically built their own network in order to get faster speeds, and they get amazing speeds. And she would like to see more people, adopting kind of programs like that. I think until it's national, cover the whole country.
That's amazing. Wow.
My apologies, it's Lancashire. Better get that.
Oh,
right.
Lancashire. Sorry, Chris. If you're listening, we are hoping to get Chris on the program at some stage. Chris and John Popham knew each other well, and I think they often discussed, this kind of need, and it'd be good to have somebody on who's got considerable experience in that area. So the next story is about equal access to digital technologies and it being a key to resilient recovery. And I think, on a previous program, I think maybe last week, we talked about how people were talking about, instead of spending money on HS2, if we spent money on digital infrastructure, it might actually be a better use of the kind of money that's being spent on that. And that's obviously a debate for another day, or an ongoing debate. But this is a story from the World Bank, talking about initiatives like Click on Kaduna, launched by the World Bank, the Rockefeller Foundation, and the Nigerian state of Kaduna state government are key to bridging the digital gap between women and men. And again, we've covered the gender divide on previous programs. But this kind of reminds us that as the world becomes more and more digitally connected, women continue to lag behind men in their use of digital technologies, particularly mobile. So then that the consequence of that is they're less likely than men to have access to vital services such as cash transfers, medical information, educational content, or employment opportunities. And the story points out that even before the pandemic, women in low and middle income countries were 8% less likely than men to own a mobile phone. And 300 million fewer women than men use mobile internet, which represents a gender gap of 20%. And that's expected to worsen because of COVID-19. So the pandemic is underscoring access to digital technology as being critical in times of crisis. For example, in India, where the gender gap in smartphone ownership is around 60%, researchers found that the majority of poor women are likely to be excluded from the COVID-19 relief digital cash transfer program set up by the government because they either lack access to digital bank accounts or aren't aware of them. And that would be, that's shocking, that things that could help families and communities so much would be, taken from people, or people wouldn't have access to them because they don't have access to the devices. And we find it here, in programs that we're running through my business. Families may have devices, but it's who has access to those devices in the family. And I know you can relate to that, Rachel, as well. Mm-hmm. As you say, a family may have a device, but who gets to use it? Who's considered the most important user of the device, and who gets it at what time, and that sort of stuff is something that's kind of ongoing. Yeah. Okay. So we come back to the last story of this program, which is about Wigan. And I just like this one because it's called Digital Wigan. It showed the Wigan Council website with a whole range of, offering very kind of direct and easy access resources for people in the Wigan area. So they have Get Online, Learn My Way, an Idea, Coding for All, Digital Resources and Learning, Digital Communities Partnership, and Digital Leaders Week. So a whole range of things to kind of whet people's appetite, I think, to some extent. Referring to existing programs. And then this TechMates thing, I thought was particularly good because I
love that.
Yeah, a mentoring service apparently helping residents to build their digital confidence by providing basic digital support over the telephone. It sounds a lot like what I do in one of my projects with Aging Better in Birmingham. But it's good for people just to be able to ring up and say, how do you do this? And for there to be somebody patient at the end of the line who's not going to get frustrated with you because you don't know where the button is, or you don't know which is right hand and which is left hand. Just people get. Yeah. It can be very frustrating, I think.
We do it for my parents all the time. Like my mum and dad both online on a laptop and a tablet, but they're very confused sometimes when they use it. So they'll ring. Well, they won't ring me. They'll ring my son and say, "Can you talk me through how to do it?" So like we both will have our device open and we do that on the phone with their tech buddies and step by step walk them through. Sometimes you'll have to get them to send us like a picture of what the screen looks like. But it's really helps. I think that's such a valuable service because it is just that confusion, and once they get in a panic about it, you can't see the wood for the trees. Then you just need someone to hold your hand and guide you through.
Absolutely. It's great to see a local authority. I mean, presumably what they've done is they've picked up on the training that's available under devices.now or in Scotland, Connecting Scotland, and they've kind of taken that on as a thing for themselves to do more proactively. And I think that's a really good example of how that new generation of projects, I suspect that they will have a much bigger impact, partly through their direct work, but also because if you pick up how to be a digital champion as part of Connecting Scotland or something, then you could use exactly the same skills and techniques to turn anyone into a digital champion. And if you put a bit of effort into it as an organisation and put a bit of resource behind it, then that might be a really good way of making progress.
Yeah, as you say, they've basically put a wrapper on other existing projects. They haven't started to reinvent something that they don't need to make because something else exists. But they've given us some local branding to give people reassurance that it's the council that's kind of checked these things out at some level to make sure that they're suitable for use. And then they have a form to request digital support from TechMates. I'm just looking at it now. And kind of gives things like Morrison's doorstep deliveries as the volunteer card scheme. So it's allowing people to have agency in what they get as well. I mean, it doesn't include your local corner shop, but I think as time goes on, that's going to happen as well. And people, I've seen plenty of local organisations in Birmingham and the Midlands starting to realise actually a website might not be such a bad thing, and we can at least have a shop front or a static even page to kind of tell people what's happening with us, when we're closed and we're open, and more people are going to need that.
Some of the business improvement districts, the BIDs, I think some of them will increasingly go down some of this line I think locally here it's been astonishing how many businesses have managed to provide an online service in some way or another. And as you say, in some cases, it's simply a list on a website with a phone number to phone up your order. But that works, so that's good. And there's all sorts of other initiatives that businesses across the country must be just desperately trying to implement as best they can, basically in a bid to survive. Because if nobody's allowed to come to your shop, the only other way of doing it is to ship things out from your shop to where people are. So
yeah. I think I'm strongly looking forward to the next Lloyds Bank Digital Charity and Business Index, because I think the landscape is going to be transformed. It's transforming before our very eyes, really. Yeah. I mean, as we said on this program, it's not ideal circumstances because people are frightened and sad and doing it because they have to, not because they want to. But hopefully there is some hope, and that those of us who kind of are more confident digitally can help the others who aren't so confident, which brings us back to kind of finish with you, Rachel. You're building confidence locally and regionally, and we wish you every success in all your projects. If people want to find you online, Rachel, what's the best place to find you?
You can go onto my website, which is creativeactivelives.org.uk.
Great. Well, thank you very much for coming on the show. I hope you enjoyed yourself, and we hope to see you again.
I will be watching next week. Thank you.
Thank you. I think that brings us to the end of the show, Sweyn. Are we ready to say goodbye?
Yes, that's great. Thanks, Pauline. Okay. Bye for now.
Thank you very much. Bye.
Bye.